Lydia Lenten Reflections, our weekly walk through the Psalms that are attached to the narrative lectionary for our following Sunday worship. I'm Pastor Scott Simmons, and with me is Beth Gallen, Luther student extraordinaire and a major Lydian leader in the Lydian movement, whatever that may end up being, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Beth, why don't you tell us what our psalm is this week?
Sure. So our psalm this week is Psalm 43, verses 3 and 4. But as is our practice, we will read the entire psalm together. It's a lament psalm. So here we go. Judge me, O God, and plead my case against a people without hesed. From a person of deceit and dishonesty may you deliver me. For you are the God of my strength. Why have you rejected me? Why must I continually walk about mourning while the enemy presses in? Send your light and your faithfulness. They will guide me. They will bring me to the mountain of your holiness and to your sanctuaries. And I will come to the altar of God, to the God of gladness of my rejoicing. And I will praise you with the harp, O God, my God. How are you bowed down, O my inmost being, and how you have been disquieted because of me. Wait for God, for yet I will praise him, the help of my countenance and my God.
Our discussion today is going to focus particularly on the middle two verses, 3 and 4. Send your light and your faithfulness. They will guide me. They will bring me to the mountain of your holiness and to your sanctuaries. And I will come to the altar of God, to the God of the gladness of my rejoicing. And I will praise you with a harp, O God, my God. So, Beth, as you were studying this earlier today in preparation, what jumped out at you about this particular verse or set of verses?
Yeah, well, I think what is most interesting to me about these two verses is that they're set in the middle of a lament, a complaint, a plea for help for God, right, to interject. And then these verses, 3 and 4, have a tone of confidence around them, that God will indeed send light and faithfulness to be the guiding forces that keep us on this path toward God. And I think what is so powerful in that is that it is God's movement to us and to this person who's experiencing suffering, right? God's movement towards us, even though it hasn't happened yet, there's a faith, a trust, a confidence that God will move towards us and send these faith and light.
I think that's really, really insightful. I too was struck in reading it about the switch from the judge me, O God, and plead my case, right? For you are the God of my strength. This judge me, O God, this plea to be judged, but then this proclamation of faithfulness, and faithfulness in the form of trust. It's not like, send your light and your faithfulness, I hope you guide me.
Right.
It's send your light and the faithfulness, they will guide me.
Right.
It's a declarative sentence, right? It's a declaration.
Yeah, there's a certainty, even in the midst of, because this hasn't happened yet, and it's still future-oriented, right? But it's with assurance that perhaps this person has experienced this before, God's faithfulness or God interceding, right? And so they know that God will do this. Or, it's almost testimony in that way.
It's very much proclamation, testimony.
Yeah.
It's also in keeping with one of the major mega themes, I think, in the Old Testament, into and through the life, death, resurrection, and continued ministry in the Church of Jesus, is of God's continued faithfulness and our proclamation of that faithfulness, even in the midst of times where it doesn't seem that God is even present. Right?
Oh, this is, I mean, and this, and to get it out from like, yeah, that's a mega theme, but to the daily experiences of people now, right, who might be experiencing divorce, or might be experiencing unemployment, right, or might be experiencing some kind of feud within their family, right, that there is this really visceral human experience of this pressing in, that kind of an affliction, right? Being pressed inward, that God is present in that, and that even as we experience suffering, that we still have a God who is faithful to us and will intercede.
That's really important, and again, insightful. It reminds me that just in the last few days, I have interacted with people who are mourning the diagnosis of a very, very bad cancer of a mother who has a young mother who has a relatively large family. And what does that mean? Not only for her children and for the friends of her children and for their friends, but also for the faith community they're connected to. Yeah. And then the death hasn't happened, but it's a very, very grim diagnosis. And then somebody that we know at the SEAL community, who just looks like a cancer's back after a time of being inert or not showing up. And then another person I know who is an older person who is sad right now because as he has moved to a new care center, and as he meets new people after being widowed and after having his health fail, as he meets new people, what is happening? His new friends are dying, and he's dealing with the grief of that. And those are real issues that happen to people every day.
Right. This is not like us just talking about, these like mega themes are good, but like these are real lived experiences of people now. And I think what's so important is that this particular psalm doesn't necessarily tie it in a nice, neat little bow at the end. There is still a waiting, which it occurs in verse 5, right? Talking about the inmost being, our inner self is still disquieted, is still in tension, is still experiencing affliction or suffering or whatever that might be, right? And that they're calling their own self to wait for God.
Wait for God. And isn't that a wonderful message, given where we are in Lent, which is a season of this following along Jesus' journey to the cross and this yet unrealized resurrection, right, which is preceded by a ultimate self-giving, right? And there's this waiting that goes on. It's like the Advent wait, only different.
Yeah.
Right? The Advent is for the birth of the Christ child. The Lenten waiting is, in a way, a deep waiting for something dramatic to happen.
Right.
And waiting, and perhaps against the ultimate death, and then waiting for, during the Holy Week, as we contemplate the Passion and waiting for the resurrection.
Yeah. And it's an uncomfortable place to be.
Oh, yeah.
Waiting sucks.
Waiting
is not fun, at least for a person like myself who was very impatient, right? It's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, okay. I called myself out. Yeah, like that experience of living in the discomfort can be excruciating.
Yet the everlasting loving kindness, the
Yeah.
chesed of God, right?
Right.
Which is mentioned.
Yeah.
Judge me, O God, and plead my case against a people without
Right.
chesed, your
Right.
loving kindness, right?
Right. Right.
Yet we are caught up and captured and claimed by a God who is loving kindness.
Yep. Rep. Who will interject. And
Mhm.
our call right now is to be a waiting people.
So the question for this week is, what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? Yeah. Yeah. And how do you know, or how can you recognize when God does interject?
And trust that that is done.
And trust that God will do that. That's really hard, folks.
We were talking earlier about just some ongoing things with Lydia Place, and about so much about what Lydia has become and is becoming, where the Spirit is working in our midst, is a recognition of God's activity, but which is always based in pisteo, the trusting belief in God. Right? That faith is not just intellectual assent; it's also a trust that God will, in God's chesed, act. So, what are you waiting for?
Yep. Blessings on your Lenten journey this
Go.
week.
Go in peace.
Serve the Lord.